Hey, I'm Courtney Brooke, and this is Hustle for Happiness podcast. We are all on this journey to find happiness, and let's face it, it takes work. And honestly, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. This podcast is dedicated to helping you navigate life and cut through the noise. As a certified life coach, recovering perfectionist, and survivor of the foster care system, I'm all about keeping things real. With my unique outlook on life that is truly infectious, we cover everything from achieving happiness and optimal self-care to stories of those sharing their wisdom and expertise. Thank you for showing up for yourself. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle for Happiness podcast. I am your host, Courtney Brooke, and today I am so excited to share a conversation I had with Dr. Marshall-Hanson. Dr. Marshall-Hanson, a dentist with a passion for transforming smiles and revolutionizing cosmetic dentistry. Originally from the scenic landscapes of Idaho, Dr. Hanson's journey led him to the University of the Pacific School of Dentistry in San Francisco, where he graduated with honors. Driven by the desire to enhance smiles in a gentle, non-invasive manner, Dr. Hanson has dedicated his career to perfecting his craft. His commitment to excellence has earned him the prestigious fellowship with the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, a distinction that sets him apart as a leading expert in his field. What sets Dr. Hanson apart is his love for both the artistry and the science of dentistry. He believes deeply in the transformative power of a beautiful smile and has developed the innovative Marshall-Hanson Method to achieve stunning results. This groundbreaking approach preserves natural tooth structure while enhancing the shape, size, proportion, symmetry, and color of smiles, surpassing the results of traditional methods like crowns or veneers. Dr. Hanson's passion for his work is evident in his dedication to sharing his expertise. He is currently in the process of writing a dental textbook aiming to change the way cosmetic dentistry is perceived and sought after by patients. Dr. Hanson strongly believes in the importance of aligning one's work with their passions and values. He advocates for going deep with that one thing we're passionate about, as it can lead to developing new ways of thinking and better ways of doing things that have an immeasurable impact for good in the profession and in one's life purpose, ultimately benefiting others and ourselves. Through his unwavering dedication to his patients and his profession, Dr. Hanson is reshaping the landscape of cosmetic dentistry one smile at a time. His belief in the transformative power of a beautiful smile serves as an inspiration to his colleagues and patients alike, reminding us of the profound impact that dentistry can have on people's lives. His message to his dental peers is that we do not have to remove an enamel in order to achieve beautiful, natural-looking smile enhancements. What struck me most about Dr. Hanson was his relentless 1% improvements. Through small, daily efforts, great things can be achieved over time. I think we can all relate to doubting ourselves or feeling stuck in a rut at some point. His story shows the power of perseverance. Beyond his story, we explore themes I'm sure will resonate, like pursuing fulfillment on your own terms, listening to your inner voice, and having the courage to do things differently. We also discuss the importance of self-care, which can be an easy thing to neglect when life gets busy. I hope you find this episode as motivating and relatable as I did. Dr. Hanson's story proves what we can achieve by staying determined. So let's get into our conversation on making your own path in life. Enjoy. We are ready to rock and roll. I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast. Sitting in your chair 2 years ago, we had some crazy cool conversations that were not just about your profession, but about life and about quality. And I was like, the energy of just what you made me not only feel as I was changing my teeth, but feeling safe in that chair. And it really resonated with me. And since then, I've been dying to get you on the podcast, not only to impact others, but to share your story, to share your background. So let's just start with that. How did you get into dentistry? Where'd you grow up?
Okay, well, I'll try to make it not too long of a story. So I grew up in Idaho, and I always loved to draw and sculpt and make things with my hands. But looking out into the future, because they always ask you what you want to be when you grow up, I never thought I could support a future family as an artist. And my mother was a nurse. And so oftentimes we talk about health and healthcare. And I always loved the body and how it would work and how it could heal. And so I had an interest in that. And so when I got into university, I thought, well, I'll just do something in the health field. And I thought then, as I got into more of that I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well just be a doctor, just go all the way. I'd be fully in, right? So I started shadowing different doctors and trying to get a feel for what kind of doctor that I wanted to be. And it happened that I came across an opportunity to shadow a dentist, and it wasn't really in the realm of what I was thinking about doing, but he happened to be a cosmetic dentist too. It was in Arizona. And so I just remember that morning going into his office and watching his patient come in the morning. I knew that she worked for a plastic surgeon, but that's all about it. I knew she was kind of in her mid to late 40s, otherwise very attractive lady, but she had some really discolored and misshapen teeth.
So her teeth, I feel like you're painting a visual, like it's stuck out in your mind.
It was a really impressive moment. So anyway, I watched the doctor talk to her for a few minutes and then start doing his work. And I had no idea really what he was doing. I didn't know anything about dentistry really at the time. But he was preparing her teeth for 10 porcelain veneers. And so at the end of that appointment, he gave her some temporaries. And he sat her up and handed her a mirror. And as she looked in the mirror, she saw what had been done, and she just started to cry. Like I could see these tears welling up in her eyes, and she just reached over and grabbed his arm, and she's just like, thank you, thank you. And so I'm just like this fly on the wall. I'm just watching all this happen. But in her eyes, I could see what she felt that he had just done for her. And it had such an impression on me. I was like, wow, like if there's any way that I could do something that valuable for someone else, that meaningful, that's what I wanted to do. And I still remember that moment. And so from that time, I started looking more into dentistry, and I found there's so much artistry in dentistry, so much ability to create, and it's a family friendly schedule. And I just anyway, it was a really good fit for me. And so that's kind of was my intro to dentistry. And it was really favorable in that I could see how so many of my talents growing up have been able to merge into this one thing where I feel like what I can do can be meaningful to people, and I can use my artistic skills and really just find a lot of joy in that whole process now.
And support your family.
Yeah, right. That's why we work, right?
Yeah, I love that you didn't stop at, I love art, but I can bring this into my life. Like I didn't hear you take that as a no.
I think that there's a lot of people who work because they just need a paycheck. And I think sometimes in our lives, that's what we have to do. You know, like I know when I was a starving student and recently married and just trying to like make ends meet in the beginning, that you just get jobs that you don't really like just because you need something, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you can get into a path where you know that you could grow in it, the sooner you can get into that pathway and just go all the way, just get fully into it, then you'll start to find ways of weaving in your passion into it and creating a niche for yourself and growing that into something meaningful for yourself. I think when we get lost in a dead end is when we kind of get comfortable in a job where we're like, okay, it's okay, but it's more of a dead end, like where you really can't develop it into something more. And I think then that's probably for many of us where we kind of lose the fire.
Yeah.
And I think if we can, I don't know, maybe invite ourselves to get uncomfortable a little bit, to get into a position where we can really grow and use our talents that will feel that fire in our life.
Yeah. And I'm just, my mind's going crazy because I know so much about you, and yet the listeners, I want them to get this picture. Okay, so keep telling your story, because eventually you're in cosmetic dentistry, but you're paving the way, and so there's this dead end you could have taken, and so there is this way where I went to at first, because you're the only one that I found that doesn't shave your teeth off, and you have the Marshall method. Dr. Marshall Method, is that how
Marshall-Hanson Method.
Marshall-Hanson Method. My apologies, but it's truly a different method, and was a wow moment for me that, wow, I don't have to shave my teeth. I mean, it was that simple, but who would have thought, right? And so one thinks, oh, when you get veneers, you have to shave your teeth. But two, I hear, how did you know that there was another way? And you got out, the dead end didn't stop. And so I think that there is some parallelism to this.
Yeah, no, I like that. So Yeah, so I got into dental school and I just wanted to soak up everything that I could about cosmetic dentistry, about the skill sets that I would need to design smiles and have a type of influence like I saw that doctor have on that lady in that first observation that I had. And so I just soaked up everything I could, and I came across the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, which they have an accreditation program.
Yeah.
Which is the closest thing that someone today can achieve to be recognized formally as a specialist in cosmetic dentistry. In dentistry, there's specialties like pediatric dentistry, oral surgery, orthodontics. Those are all formal specialties, but cosmetic dentistry is not a formal specialty yet. It probably will be soon.
Because of you.
But this is the closest thing, is to become accredited and then become a fellow through this academy. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be as good as I could be in that whole world of artistry and dentistry and helping people love their smile. And so after I graduated dental school, I still continued to focus in on that. And a couple of things I found about myself and about the work that I was doing as I started doing cosmetic dentistry, working toward this accreditation and fellowship, we had to do a number of different types of cases where we're doing 6 or more porcelain veneers, and that just tests our ability to work with the laboratory and communicate how the design should be. Or you have to do 1 or 2 porcelain veneers, where that tests your ability to work with the lab and communicate and blend in 1 or 2 restorations with the rest of the teeth. Or we had to replace a missing front tooth with an implant, and that tests our ability to shape the tissue and make it look like a totally natural tooth and blend it in. And then a case type 4 is where we restore a large portion of a front tooth with direct composite. And that tests our ability to sculpt the material and to add in translucencies and really blend that into the natural tooth. And then the 5th case is where we do 6 or more direct composite veneers. And so I was doing all these different types of cases, trying to measure them against that standard of excellence to try to submit those and pass and become accredited. And I noticed something about myself. I got through this process and I found it was difficult for me to communicate everything that I wanted to a lab technician, who are generally in dentistry. They're the ones that make the porcelain veneers and they make the crowns. And I knew in my mind exactly what I wanted it to be like or look like, but that was a hard thing. I would even put PowerPoints together at that time with arrows and images and text. So this is what I want, and I want it to look like this. And I never would get back what I wanted. And so I would often have to send it back multiple times to make modifications. And sometimes that became frustrating.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the patients would even be like, okay, we've done this a few times. Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing, right? So it became a little frustration for me. And I decided, okay, well, I'm going to learn to do this myself, because it'll be more predictable for me to make it myself than try to communicate what I want to someone else, because I know what I want it to be. And so for about 10 years, I did all my own lab work, which is unusual for dentists. But I would come back after I put my kids to bed and come back into the office, and I would make teeth out of ceramics and shape them. I learned so much from that process. So anyway, I'm doing smiles, right? And I'm doing some in porcelain and some in composite. And I noticed that I felt differently when I did those two. I felt when I did a porcelain case, like I liked how it looked in the end because I designed it just how I wanted, but I still felt heavy inside because I knew that I had to shave down their natural teeth in order to accommodate the porcelain. And many of the patients had healthy teeth. They just were maybe chipped or discolored, or maybe there were gaps, or maybe too small, or things like that. And I had to shave them down to some degree to accommodate the porcelain. And I always just felt really heavy about that, even though I liked the end result. But then when I was working with composites, I felt differently. Like I didn't feel that heaviness about it. And I still liked how it looked. And I noted that. Like I'm like, I feel better when I'm using this material because I'm not having to shave down their teeth. However, there were challenges with composite at that time. Challenges that are common for people to hear about composite is that they will chip, or they'll stain, or they'll discolor, or they're just temporary and they're difficult and all these things. And so I think that I just felt so driven because I wanted to feel good about what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to do the artistry, but I also wanted to feel good about it. And I was so driven by there's got to be another way to overcome these challenges that we have with composites. So I can do it in a way that it doesn't chip and that it won't stain and doesn't discolor and it won't be temporary. And the cool thing about composite that I found too is even though I was the same artist with the porcelain or the composite, I found that the composite always looked more believable. It looked more real than what I could ever do with porcelain. And so I think those things kept me going. It kind of kept a hope there that there could be a way. And so over the last probably 15 years, I've just been developing methods, trying to change the system to where we could overcome these challenges, to where I wouldn't see them chip or discolor or crack or break or stain. And the cool thing is that now I have found a method, a recipe that I can use with any case, and I can enhance a smile and do it in a non-invasive way. So it's technically reversible. It looks more natural and more beautiful than what I could do with porcelain. I feel better about it. I get to use my artistry. And it's just so fun. And for individuals who want to enhance their smile, but they don't want it to look like they've got veneers and they don't want to damage their teeth or shave them down, this is a really exciting new development, a new option that many people, and even dentists today still, there's a lot of people that aren't aware that this is an option and a legitimate way to treat things. And currently, I'm working on writing a dental textbook about this whole process to show the research that I've been doing over the last number of years and all the science and reasoning behind why this works and why it's legitimate and why it can hold up really well over time and how beautiful it can be. So I'm excited about that process. I've learned a lot about it. But back to your point of like, you know, the dead end, I think it's when you feel passionate about something that's when you're like, okay, it's worth the energy to find another way around this, to find a solution.
And I love that. Like in my head, well, what screams for me what do you say? What do I think? Like it screams like you're relentless. Like you're seriously relentless. And, you know, you think of J.K. Rowling who tried to sell her book 50 times and she got a no. And then it was that one time she got that yes. And so I think your story is just exactly that, is you didn't say no to art. You didn't say no to the way the Americans or even the world is actually doing veneers. You didn't say no just because someone else did. And so I love that, you know, when you were talking about when you were building your own teeth or submitting, that you couldn't communicate or it was harder for you, but you didn't let that stop you. And then also if people were questioning you, I'm sure your self-worth came in. Like, am I good enough? Am I cut out? Like, I'm sure you had some of those limiting beliefs. How did you overcome those harder moments?
Yeah, so good question. I think just that's the way that my brain likes to work is if I have a dilemma or have a situation where it appears that there's a win-lose outcome, I like to try to be creative and think outside the box and like, how can we make this a win-win instead of a win-lose?
Yeah.
And I try to teach my kids that way to when they're discussing something or arguing about something. I'm like, okay, well, if you can find out what the other person wants, then you can figure out a way that you can both get what you want, right? And you can have a win-win. And so often, I mean, I just kind of think that way. So if there's a challenge or an apparent obstacle, you're like, okay, well, there's got to be a creative way to get around this. And I think that we as people, like, I believe that we're children of God and that we have this divine nature within us that loves to create. Like him or like Heavenly Father, like God. We love to create and we find joy in that. And all of us have these different ways of creating. But when we can get into that zone of when we're creating what we create, well, you know, in our style or our way, there's so much joy in that and there's so much fire in that. And I think that when we go really deep with that, we recognize that about ourselves, that we can open new doors. We can find new possibilities, new solutions that we didn't think were there before.
Yeah.
And then that's just exciting rather than it being like a downer, like, oh, dead end.
Yeah.
You find new escapes, new ways, and it just opens up these new oceans where people haven't been before. And that's really exciting.
How did you have this mindset of, oh, think of different ways? Or I feel like not saying, oh, being a down, no, this is not a dead end, but this is an opportunity. I mean, not everyone thinks that way. You know, this is an automatic, oh, I'll just stick with the job that I don't love or be in the relationship that I don't love. Or, you know, you don't have to love everything. Like you said, doesn't have to be this dichotomy of life. But how did you develop that mindset of, you know, I can, regardless of someone telling me no, or, you know, not being acknowledged, or something hasn't been created yet? Did you have an influence in your life, or was there somebody or a specific moment that helped with that?
I think there's probably two ingredients to that. And honestly, I'm not sure where it came from. I mean, we're all kind of born with different ways of looking at things and different skills. But I think two things are, one is patience. I'm I'm quite patient in that I don't get frustrated easily. And I think about things and I try to look at things from different views. And so patience, I think, helps me because I don't, I guess, get stuck when I hit a dead end sometime. I can be patient and look at it differently. And then I think hard work too. I think those two things. The hustle, like you talked about, like if you have patience and you're willing to work hard for something you believe in, then I think that when you have obstacles or challenges, it's almost exciting because rather than sad, because now there's an opportunity to shift and change and become something different and evolve. And so I don't know, I kind of look at mistakes as stepping stones. Like, for example, when I would do a case with direct composite early on, because my method has evolved over time and gotten better over time. Even now, when I do my cases, I get excited to try to find the mistake.
Okay.
To try to find the error, the thing that, I wish I would have done that, instead. Because that's the pearl, like that's the treasure that then you can apply for the next one. And it makes that next one that much better. And so I think that's totally like a principle you can apply in your life. When you go out to do something, you try to go achieve something, and then something about that performance is like, I wish I would have done this instead. Like that's the exciting thing. Like if you can find that, then you know that if you apply it on the next one, that next one's going to be better. And so then my cases or my work or even our life is just like this collection of little 1%.
Yes.
That each case or each day or whatever is just 1% better than the other. And over time that adds up. And over time, you start to see your potential develop and the impact and influence you can have for good on other people and even in your own life.
Yeah, I love that. It's those 1%, it does build. It really, really does. It doesn't have to be like before you came, I was doing a time lapse and I looked at the time lapse and I was like, I celebrated setting up this whole thing because we start somewhere. Whether it's you got that veneer or someone finally communicated your work or, you developed this method and got even better. It is those 1%. And I think celebrating the 1%,
yes,
because then you'll start to celebrate everything.
Yeah.
Like everything really does matter. And I take as seriously as washing the dishes as to writing a paper or a speech. I feel like if you treat everything with equality in life, I feel like the quality of your life gets even better. And then what I'm hearing is for you is when you celebrate those 1%, whether you don't label it good or bad, but it's if you celebrate those 1%, your purpose comes out. And I'm really hearing that your purpose really came forth with the passion of finding a new method or finding a new way or, not being told no. Like your purpose came through that. Am I hearing this correctly?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm inspired just by hearing this.
So there was this one, I would say maybe like a pivotal moment. It was probably only like 5 years ago and I was still just doing general dentistry. And I was invited to this conference with a number of other doctors, and we had this speaker, and his name was Chris Smith, really amazing speaker. And he believes that your story and your passion is like the biggest tool that you have to communicate what your mission is and your method, like, what you're going to do. And in that conference, he asked us all a question, and he's like, what is it about what you do every day? And for me, it was dentistry, but you could apply this to whatever any of you are doing. So what is it that you do about your work? What's the one procedure, the one thing about what you do that truly aligns with who you are and what you believe in? And I was really struck by that question. I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? What dental procedure aligns with who I am or like what I believe in? It just seems so abstract to me. And I'm like, well, I just try to do dentistry best I can, but like, aligns with who I am. Like that was deep.
Yeah.
And I thought about that for weeks because he invited us. He's like, hey, once you find that, he's like, I want you to go really deep with that one thing.
Okay.
And if you go deep on it, you'll find that your ability to influence others and your ability to create an impact in your profession will be huge. And so I thought about that. And then for me, I thought, okay, well, there are two things that I feel really passionate about in dentistry. And one of those was enhancing people's smiles. Like from that first moment, I just felt like that's what I wanted to be a part of, is helping people feel better about their smiles. So enhancing smiles was one thing I felt really passionate about. And the second thing was not shaving down people's teeth.
Yeah.
Like I recognized that I felt really, I don't know, not powerful, but I just strongly. That's what I mean to say. I felt really strongly about not shaving down people's teeth because how I felt, and I just wanted to do the right thing. And so I'm like, okay, those are the two things I feel passionate about, not shaving down teeth and enhancing people's smiles. And then when I recognized those were the things I was passionate about, I suddenly realized that the one procedure that does align both of those things is this method of composite veneers. And so then I hear his voice in the back of my mind being like, okay, so when you find that, go deep with that one thing. And so I had this question, this challenge to myself is, would I leave all the rest of general dentistry and just do this one thing and go really deep with it? And it was really scary for me at first because I was like, wow, if I did leave all the rest of general dentistry, the implants and crowns and fillings and everything else that I do, would I be busy enough? Would I make it? Or would I put my family at risk? And, like how would that work?
Came in.
But I felt like, okay, well, if it does truly align with who I feel like what I believe in, then it'll be worthwhile to do. And so then I made that decision. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this one thing. And so I had to change the whole structure of my business, what I do. Like I have a business model that's totally different from most every other general dentist out there, but I had to change it in order to go deep with this one thing. And since then, it has really been what he said. Like it's really been impactful to influence maybe thinking differently in our whole profession of think differently about cosmetic dentistry, that we don't have to shave down teeth, that things can look a lot more realistic and believable than what we're used to. And that there's this whole nother option, this whole nother world of things that are possible that we didn't think before. And so I think like take home message for this part is, for me anyway, is finding something in your work that aligns with who you are and what you believe in.
Yeah.
And then taking that challenge to try to go really deep with that one thing. And I would say maybe in the little bit of that I know about you, like when I met you a couple of years ago, and you mentioned to me back then that you loved hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
Like if you were in the grocery store waiting in line, like you were so excited just to find out about the person in front of you and their story and where they're from and where their life is going. And I can see how you now too have just taken this little passion of yours, something that you loved.
Yeah.
And now you're just making it bigger. And you're like, okay, how can people's stories now influence for good on a huge scale, people around the world even. And these little 1% of how you've grown into this and you've created something like these podcasts and the coaching that you do and how you can help people. And it's so intertwined with your passion of knowing people's stories and the value of someone's story. So maybe you can share a little bit about that, about how, I don't know, do you see a parallel in your own world and your own profession and what you're doing now that kind of lines up with that?
Great question. I feel like for me, where my purpose has rose to the podcast to the day, I didn't actually get here from like just, oh, I want to start a podcast. Like you said, it was actually funny that you bring that up. It is a culmination of me wanting to genuinely get to know people. People love to be acknowledged. People love to be listened to. And I don't think that there's enough of that in the world. And so for me, I didn't have that growing up, and so it's what did I need as a child? And now I'm bringing it into my adulthood. So I used to do plastic surgery marketing and I loved before and after pictures and hearing people's stories. And I love doing testimonials and really asking people and interviewing them for these, not for these dentists, for these plastic surgeons. And so that's all part of it. I mean, marketing is a very social degree. I taught myself all social media and all of that has evolved to where I am at today. And I think for me and my piece is how I'm still learning my purpose though. I'm still learning. I don't know what I'm going to get out of this podcast, right? All I know it's fulfilling. All I know it feels good. So I'm really for the first time following the feeling and not where the money is at or where that external reward is, but really what makes my heart smile. And when I was sitting in your chair, I was just felt compelled. And that was actually before the podcast.
Yeah.
And so, that is funny that, my podcast is based on hearing people's stories and sharing that and not necessarily looking for the rainbows and butterflies, but hearing the struggle to get to their happiness, hence hustle for happiness. We're all working for that. But for me, specifically, I still don't know necessarily where this is going, but I feel more on track. I feel more aligned. And that it resonated with me when you're like, it felt good when I was doing my work. I was doing it my way because there was some type of fighting within your inner self that you knew within, like, this doesn't feel right. And so I think that feeling of, listening to that gut and again, coming back to the passion of our why. And so I'm sure you still have days of, this is hard. And why am I doing this? How do you stay motivated? I mean, you're writing a textbook, you have a practice, running a family, and you have a Netflix documentary. And so you have all of these things, but how do you, I guess, one, stay motivated? I mean, these are all motivating things, but gosh, now I'm hearing another question is, how do you stay grounded?
So I think I just think our world in general is super busy. We're all trying to take on more than we really can handle or should handle.
Guilty.
And so I think, I think the important part is trying to simplify your priority, like recognize what your priorities are and not to have too many and just simplify. And so I think like for me, I kind of have 3 things in my life.
Okay.
One of those is my family, and then my church or my religion, and then my work. So those 3 things. I don't really have a lot of hobbies outside of those 3 things that could draw me away.
Okay.
You know, like I don't go golfing and leave my family for 4 hours to go golfing and things like that. So I've just simplified, and I know I can manage 3 things, right?
Okay.
And so I've just created priorities. Those are my 3 things. And most of the time throughout the week, I can manage 3 things. I think if I were doing more than that, then that would be hard. But like if I had multiple businesses or I had like other hobbies and things outside of work that I was trying to work on or do, or, I don't know.
I relate with that.
Yeah.
I have too many. I feel like I have too many hobbies. Like I have like a big eyes for life, I call it, because I still find myself wanting to go back and paint and do ceramics and like take classes. And so I preach like the balance of, you know, I guess I don't have that family part. So James and I can do all these things together, right? So you do have the family and the kids, and you guys probably bike and hike and travel. I mean, there's hobbies within those 3.
Yes. Yeah.
But for me, I just now realizing, like, I think like for me, I've been had to tell myself to even simplify, like, no, don't take on another thing. Is this going to add stress to my life, or is this really going to enhance?
Yeah.
And so I've had to simplify, because that's how we get this term busy. And are you busy or are you fulfilled? Right.
I love that distinction between those 2 things. Yeah. Because one doesn't necessarily equal the other, right?
No. And it's an easy term to get caught up on, right? It's, oh, I'm busy, I can't. But it's like, wait, I get to, I can't. I get to go at home and be with my family. Like, that is your choice. Like, it's an opportunity. I can't, I'm busy. Well, you're choosing that. Like, and so it's an easy dialogue that we all, as a society, even sometimes I get caught up and like, wait. So when I find myself using the word, I'll get this done quickly, or I'm busy, that means I need to simplify like ASAP, because that means I'm taking on too much.
I think too, one thing that's been, I don't know, a good trick for me is I know, for example, it's easy for me and probably for a lot of people too, that I can scroll social media and spend too much time doing that. So, and then I'm not as present at home, or I'm not thinking about the priorities that I have, and I get distracted. And so just trying to find ways to change the system. So I have my wife like block it out so that I can only spend 20 minutes on social media on a day, and then it shuts down, locks itself up. So finding little strategies to change the system to where even if I was thinking like that I was going to scroll Instagram, it shuts down. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a good reminder. I'm going to go do, thank you. I'm going to go do something else like I should be. And so I think anywhere that we can change the system to make things more predictable and help us achieve the goals we have are key things. We should look for those and apply those. And that's been kind of one thing with this smile enhancement method is that there were challenges, right? And so I had to find ways to change the system. I had to find a different way to apply the material, different way to shape the material, different business structure that would allow me to work it. And so that's kind of fun to think outside the box, to find solutions that change the system for you so that you can't step outside of what you want, and what your path is, and what you've determined your goals to be. There are systems that keep you in track. And I think those are really helpful, because I just think all of us just get distracted really easy. Or like you said, we say yes to too many things and we lose track of what our priorities were. And so I think, as you were talking about too, getting grounded, I think it's important to have some time, either daily or weekly, where we can just sit down and think, okay, how are we doing with our priorities? Are there any plates that are about to fall that we need to go back and spin, and then kind of reorganize and re-strategize for that? And so taking time to really reevaluate where you are, I think is important to staying grounded, staying in your priorities and what's really important for your life.
And you're growing with the textbook and traveling, and you're teaching internationally now, and the documentary. How are you specifically staying grounded, or how do you say no to things? Like I feel like those two go hand in hand, but how do you say no?
That's a good question, because it's not easy to say no to things, because you want to be helpful. You want to help whatever you can.
You want to grow too. I mean, your method, I want to ask the question later, but your method is amazingly like changing the world, I believe.
Well, thanks. I do believe that it will change the way that cosmetic dentistry is sought after and the way that it's done.
Yeah.
Because I think individuals, especially nowadays, we want something that's believable and realistic, and we want it to not do any harm to our natural teeth.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a no-brainer then. If there's an option that can accomplish both of those things, like why would you do something else? But it's just a matter of getting the information out there, getting the awareness out there. And so
that's more and more like social media and, creating content or traveling or like that. I'm sure you get opportunities, but how do you decide what you take on?
Good question. I'm not sure if I have an answer for that, but I think if I were to try to answer that, I might just say that. So I like to just take one thing to completion before I move on to another thing.
Okay.
Like even part of my method, like I just do one tooth at a time. Like I'm not trying to design all the teeth at one time. I do one tooth at a time. I get that where I want it, and then I can think about the next tooth. And so I think in my life, I'm probably that way too, where I have a project that I believe in. I'm going to see that through to completion. And then I'll have my full mental capacity that I can put onto something else. Because if I spread my brain out too thin, where I'm trying to focus on multiple things, I just don't feel like I have the quality then anymore.
Yeah.
That I'm not giving my full self to it. And so I don't know, that's probably one way. If I'm like, okay, I can take something else on after I finish this. Once this is done, I don't have to think about it anymore. And then I can focus on another thing. So maybe taking projects on one at a time, see it to completion so you can give your whole self to it. And you're not divided.
Yeah.
And then when that's done, now you're free to do something next.
And I've noticed that when I was in your chair or right before, because when you're getting your teeth done, you don't talk. So I did a lot of listening and I loved all of it. But I did notice that not when you worked on me, actually, it was right before I'd go in the chair, you would listen to the whole story I had to share with you. Like you'd ask me a question and you'd let me finish the whole story. Like I felt like you were very present with our conversation. And then you would acknowledge that we were done talking, you move to the next thing. But I noticed, and it's funny you're bringing upon to completion. That is very thorough, not only in your work, but how I felt in your chair. And I did little talking, but I just really felt heard. And that resonated with me when you're like, even completion. I'm like, wait, you made me feel that way when we were just talking about who knows what. I mean, I remember sitting in your chair and if you guys haven't seen this documentary, The Octopus Teacher.
Oh, yeah.
I was crying.
That's such a good one.
Such a good one. But he had me in his chair and your mouth is open so big. And I had tears dripping down because it was a powerful story.
Right.
It's really good parallelism. But I felt so comfortable to even cry in your chair, but I couldn't even hold tears back. But I was just like, oh my gosh, that's totally a side tangent. But truly how not only how you make someone feel, but now aesthetically, you're making someone's life change. You know, like to me, I see a huge connection.
Yeah, I love that. And I probably hadn't given that a lot of thought as far as the value of treating one thing to completion, freeing yourself up to go to the next thing. And I think even at home, like if your daughter or your child is sitting and telling you a story, like being totally tuned in to that story so that they feel you're present until that's done before moving on. I think that's a really good point, that we can be more present for the people around us and people we care about by just fulfilling that all the way till the end before you move on to the next thing of like, oh, I got to take this phone call, or oh, I have to do this on the computer. You know, just give your whole self to whatever you're doing in that moment and then close that and move on to the next thing you can give your whole self to.
Yeah, I was talking with, I don't know if it was I think it was a client this morning, and we were talking about how she used the term quickly. But I was like, even if you're on the couch, wholeheartedly sit on the couch, that when you're ready to get up, you're like, I am done with that task. Like I feel like I'm off the couch, because people are doing too many things at once. So they're not really upon completion. But even if it's as simple as, I'm going to have this conversation with you and then move on, right? Because then you're like, wait, I did that. I'm not necessarily exhausted from that, but I was so present that I'm actually able to move on. Just like when you're sitting on the couch, like there should be no guilt. If you're choosing to sit on that couch, don't label it lazy, but wholeheartedly rest. Sit there, be there, because when you get up, you're like, I am done with that. But it's almost like if you're not but it brings you back to the present moment, treating everything. And I love
I think there's fulfillment in that.
There is fulfillment. I mean, I imagine you sitting with your daughter. I mean, like, if I didn't think of the next thing, you'd finish that. You'd be in that conversation hard. Like, you'd be like, yes, I've learned everything about whatever she wanted to talk about in that moment. It's fulfilling. And then there's purpose in that. And then again, finding purpose. I think for me, when you asked me earlier about purpose, sometimes I even question myself of, am I doing the right thing? Or is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Or how can I make this bigger or reach more people? And we've said this over and over, but simplifying it. But have you had any of those moments in your career where sometimes you're just like, gosh, I feel lost? Or, how do I, because I have those moments of high motivation. And then sometimes I'm just like, how do I so low sometimes.
I would venture to say that when we feel the lowest, it's when we're not being true to ourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
When we know we should be doing something else, or in our heart, I don't know, like the movie Moana, right? She there was something calling to her to do something, and when she wasn't doing that thing, she didn't have the fire. And so I think, I don't know, I would say that's for myself. If I feel low, that would be a red flag to say, okay, I need to reevaluate and see, is there something that I know I should be doing that I'm not, that I should be dedicating more time to that I'm not? And if I'm not being true to myself, then that would be the feeling low is the result of that. So I think, again, like when you're looking for those little mistakes and things in life as those pearls to help give you that 1% and boost you, that those are the little red flags. So when you're like, oh, I'm feeling down, recognize that, be present in that for a minute. Okay, well, why is this the case? Probably because I'm missing something. And how can I redirect my path to recenter myself on those things that do give me that passion and fulfill me? I don't know. And I think as I look back, and when I was doing all of general dentistry, like that's when you have multiple patients all at the same time, and they all have different needs, and you're trying to do your best work, but someone's waiting, maybe 2 people are waiting for you, and you don't want them to wait, but you want to do a good job, and you feel pulled, that you just never can give your whole self. You never feel like any of those tasks are really the best that you could have done.
Right.
And that's what I think is hard. Like, that's when I think, you hear that dentists have like the highest depression rate, because they all want to do well. They just feel like they can't give their best. And so if they're not giving their best, then they're worthless in a way, right?
So you believe that statistic that dentists are the most depressed because they are pulled in many ways. What do you think that statistic stems from? Or if it even is a current statistic? I don't even know.
I think traditionally it was. I think because dentistry, especially in the past, things are a lot better now, was associated with pain. You come in and they're drilling on your tooth, and there's pain there, or they inject you with needles in your mouth, and that's painful. And so I think there's a lot of pain. And so I think as dentists, if they feel like that they're causing pain to people, like that's a hard thing to deal with. And then on top of that, there's so much demanding of them, people waiting, trying to do a good job. You want everything to last forever, and it doesn't always do that. And so I think you just feel like, if you kind of identify yourself, you label yourself as, okay, I'm a dentist and I'm not doing that well, so I'm not valuable.
Right.
And I think that's where that stems from, where we think our identity is what we're doing, not who we are, but our job. And then if our job is poor, then we're poor and we're worthless. And I think that's probably where that stems from.
Do you relate with that?
I would say not, especially now, because I feel like I've changed the system to where I see one patient at a time, and I see that through to completion before I see the next patient. And so I don't feel like I'm pulled, and I feel like I can give all of myself, all my attention, everything I have to that one patient, that one case, that one product, and then move on. And so I feel like I can give everything. I can do my best. Wherein previously the systems that I had, which was a normal dental office where you have hygiene checks and you have multiple people seeing, like a team and multiple people at the same time, I just don't think I could have. I never probably felt like I was able to do that. as well. So I think changing the system has helped me now. But I do think there's still a lot of dentists that are super overwhelmed, trying to see a high volume of patients just to make ends meet. And they just don't feel like they're giving their best product. And people are feeling in pain or they're unhappy. And it's really common for people to say, okay, like, doc, don't get this personal, but I hate the dentist, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're faced with that all the time of people
Yeah.
like not wanting to be there and you're not feeling like you're giving your best,
The energy they bring.
I think that can be really hard. Yeah.
Yes.
For a lot of people. And so, but I do think that there's an opportunity to change the system. Like if there's something that you love about that, like we said, aligns with who we are, go deep on that one thing, change the system, change the way that it is, and allow yourself to be totally present and give your whole self to that thing that you believe in, and then find fulfillment in that. What do you think?
Yeah, what comes to mind when you say that is the thought of others, right? What is someone like thinking, okay, in this world of social media, everything's this comparison, and not everyone has mindsets. And I have a mindset like that too, of just like, when just go and do it, regardless of if the fear comes in. Like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Or what would you do if you weren't thinking of others? Oh, I do this. Well, then do just that. But I don't think it's that easy. I mean, it can be, but there's a possibility. But I'm hearing just this courage button is being pressed a lot with you and your life and your business. And, you know, it takes courage to start a new method, to be confident in it. And I'm sure people are questioning you. And, you know, what has helped you with that confidence and having that courage?
That's a good question. I love that these questions I haven't asked myself before, but they're good. They're deep questions.
We're rolling with it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, so I think one thing that could be important in feeling grounded or having courage or feeling purpose, I think the one thing that can bring us back to feeling able to be courageous is just knowing who we are.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like my religion and believing in God and being a Christian and in Christ, and that he can assist me, and just knowing who I am as a child of God and my potential, I think that anchors me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like regardless of the circumstances of what's happening to me, you know, on the outside, that I can still have peace in knowing who I am, and that I'm not alone, and that there is purpose in this life and a reason why we're here and why we need each other. Right. And so I think it's easier to take a position of courage when you feel like you're standing on something solid.
Yeah, your foundation.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm new to religion, and I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm openly exploring it with my husband, James, and we've been tested this year. And so usually you go into faith when you've been tested. But for me, it was seeing my husband lean towards God and seeing what it did in his life. And I go, I wonder what it can do in my life when he's the one being tested. I'm not necessarily, I was tested for sure by seeing him in such distraught or highs and lows. But I was like, this is bringing us together through someone else. You know, through the relationship of God, I got to speak his language. I understood my husband more. And so for me, it was not necessarily me coming to God for myself, but for my husband. And that was a really cool moment, because over the last year of just realizing that, yeah, that foundation is a higher purpose. There's a higher power. And if we see that, it kind of re-energizes, at least when I think of it, re-energizes me. But yeah, the foundation of religion, or if you believe in spirit or whatever your foundation is, just, I believe that religion, as this last year, is really is a great way to have that foundation. And it's interesting. It's just, I've more and more podcasts, God has been brought into the conversation. And so I'm just having this moment in my head of like, this is so cool to hear that. And like, not even like planning it, but just knowing like there's little seeds, right? For even me, as I talk to you, is like, yeah, there is a higher purpose. And when you have that foundation solid, you're pretty much unshakable.
You can have courage. Yeah. Because you know you're not alone, and that you will be supported in your righteous desires.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to do good, then you'll be supported in that. And I think you can trust that. And yeah, I think that just gives you courage to step outside into those areas that are maybe not lit yet.
Yeah.
You know, that you're going to explore, you'll pioneer something, you're going to try something new that might take criticism, or, you know, might put things at risk a bit. But if you, again, believe it, you feel strongly about it, and you believe that it's for the right purposes, that it's to do good for other people especially, then you feel like you have support, that you're just not on your own.
So for the our last few questions. It's already been 50 minutes. Crazy. It's so fast. How do you take care of yourself outside like of work, of pioneering, of familying, of like, I mean, God is still, I believe, self-care, but how do you take care of yourself? Like, what are some things? Do you have like not a morning routine, but do you have something before you go into that office, or what's your pump up, I guess to say?
Well, I think for me recently, and I think we have different seasons in our life when we have to focus on things more in some seasons than others.
Okay.
Like for me at this stage in my life, like I recognize that I really have to focus and try hard to get enough sleep.
Yeah.
You know, because it's easy to stay up late and I have to get up really early. And so I'm trying to aim for 7 hours. And I know that if I only get 5 each night, by the end of the week, that adds up and I'm just not my best.
Yeah.
You know? So that's become more of a priority for me of trying to get 7 hours and work backwards. I'm like, okay, if I have to wake up at this time, what's 7 hours back? That's when I need to be getting to bed. So that part I think is important. I think our diet is really important.
Yeah.
I try to avoid refined sugars. I try to eat as many plants as I can. I try to drink as much water as I can and do meat sparingly. I feel like when I'm doing that well, I have more energy and I feel better.
Yeah.
And then I can be more present. I have, like I said, more fire, more energy to get things done. I'm more efficient. So I think the big things are getting enough sleep, getting enough water, trying to eat healthy, getting exercise. So I try to go to the gym, maybe a few times a week, or if I can't make it to the gym, trying to do an exercise at home just to stay active and move.
Yeah.
I think those are all really, really important. And then taking time to meditate, I think is important too, because our mind is so connected to our physical well-being that we can't miss our mind, right? And the spiritual part of that, and taking time to meditate and think about, what your priorities are and what you want to focus on and who you are, right? And so I don't know. I think those things are helpful. And then if you have good friends or you have good family that are also watching out for you, that can really be a help too. When they're like, hey, you need to have some more rest, or here, you need to eat, or let me bring you something, like that. It's really good to surround yourself with people that watch out for you too. I think that helps.
And I'm learning that last piece of like watching out that's my season, is the authority piece of, you should actually rest. You should actually, and I'm like, no, I can do it all. No. And it's like, I am good enough. Like, and so for me, it's like taking that moment of, it's actually not authority, and turning that into love and saying, no, this is a loving statement. Because growing up, I had people telling me what to do my whole life, or what home you were going to, or, you're going to be Catholic today, depending on the home I lived in with foster care. And so for me, authority has been this really hard thing for me. And so just recently, I've had this revelation of how many times did I mistake authority for when something was love? And so that is a loving piece of like, no, receiving from others and saying, hey, no, you need to take a break, and not just saying, at least for me, what comes up is, no, you're right, probably should. But an old pattern would be, no, I can do it, or why are you telling me? Or, that questioning. And so completely different areas, but it's still, there's a crossing here of, there is that piece of listening to others in the environment around you and receiving.
Yeah, that's important too, I think, because I think you're like me, where it's easy to just take it on ourselves.
Absolutely.
And not delegate.
Yes.
But I've learned a bit over a while that I really appreciate it when other people allow me to do something for them. So yeah, I think that that's a really important thing, that we allow people to do things for us that we can be receivers too. Because I've learned, like, I really enjoy it when other people allow me to do a service for them. Like if I have a neighbor and I can bring them a meal, you know, if they're sick or something, and they allow that, like that does a lot for me.
Yes.
And I've recognized that too. Like being able to serve someone else brings a lot of fulfillment to me. And if I deny someone that opportunity by letting them do something for me, I'm denying them that fulfillment in a way. And so I think it's important for us to allow ourselves to be helped, to allow people to do things for us sometimes, to receive. Because I think a lot of us were like, I'm just like, well, I can do it on my own. I don't need help. I can still do it. You don't have to help me.
It's just easier.
But allowing that, I think, is really good for us and for them. And it kind of opens up doors and breaks down walls too. So I don't know. I think that's just a good habit in life, is to be open to receiving as well as giving and doing.
And I like that you said like seasons specifically. Like we all have like different seasons, and it's not going to look the same. Like running 7 miles is not every day, is not like, working out at 6 a.m. every day is not a lifetime thing. But we have different seasons, and being okay with the change that, this season I need sleep, and not being hard on yourself of saying I got to wake up at like a lot of early morning, like this society of Monday starts 6 a.m. Let's go. It's like not everyone's Monday is the same. There's a nurse that works Sunday night till 4 a.m. That mentality doesn't apply, or the morning routine doesn't apply to every single person, but just taking that season and looking at it, what do I need right now versus, oh my gosh, I used to do this every single day and eat the same thing and be so disciplined, or be hard on ourselves, but allowing for the season where we show up in life and meeting yourself where you need to be met. I mean, that's the big piece that I'm hearing is you're meeting yourself where you need to be met right now. And that's a huge self-care piece that not a lot of people talk about. You wake up sometimes feeling, I'm not 100% today versus trying to be 100%. I'm just going to be, maybe I'm just 80. What does that 80% look like? Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, just giving yourself grace, I think.
Yeah, I love that.
Good. And seasons.
So as we wrap up the podcast, what do you want to leave the listeners with of the Hustle for Happiness podcast with?
I think just summary of some of the things that we mentioned that stand out is just taking time to evaluate your life and your work and what you do and say, okay, well, of those things that I do, of my work, what is it that truly lights a fire in me? What I feel passionate about? What aligns with who I am and what I believe in?
Yeah.
And how can I go deeper on that to create more fulfillment in my life and better serve people around me? I think that's a key thing. I think giving ourselves grace and recognizing that we have seasons and that this season of my life will be different maybe than what I was focused on 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's okay, that I'm different in different aspects now and different focuses now than I was back there, and that's okay. I think another thing is looking and like being excited about finding those, I wish I would have things, because those are the beautiful things that can make our lives better moving forward. Those are the 1%. And I think we should try not to look past taking that moment to be like, okay, what can I learn from this mistake? And how can I apply that knowledge to my next life, my next season, my next day? And make that better, 1% better than what it was. And I think having that gives us hope. It gives us, excitement and progress. I think just like you said earlier, celebrating the little increments of progress that we have, including the mistakes, I think is important. And then again, that's just grace. And then having courage to do those things that you really believe in.
Yeah.
To just take a step out into something that's maybe unknown, right? And have the courage to do that. And if you can find either family or religion or something about who you know, like what you know about yourself. So some kind of anchor that can allow you to do that courageous thing, to have that support so that you're not alone, and then go for it. Yeah. And I think as you do those things, we'll find more fulfillment. We'll find more happiness. I think one formula that I was just thinking about recently is that I wrote this in my journal. I have like a little journal, but I don't really write down things that I did.
Okay.
I just write down thoughts, like little messages, like things I learned, or maybe I'll write down a question.
Okay.
And then as I'm studying or thinking about, and I can write down some thoughts, and then at the end of that page, hopefully have an answer, that matches that question. So that's kind of one thing that I do for journaling myself. But I had this thing that I wrote down just recently, that service to others yields gratitude and appreciation, and gratitude and appreciation in our life yields happiness. And so I think that's just a good formula. And I think whenever we're not feeling happy, we can come back to that and be like, how can I better serve others? How can I be more present for others? Use my talents to help others and build gratitude in my own life that will yield ultimately happiness.
I love that. So where can the followers or listeners find you?
So I share my work on Instagram at Marshall-Hanson Dentistry, and I have a website, marshallhansondentistry.com. And I'm just sharing this method that I'm doing. It's a non-invasive way to enhance people's smiles. And I feel really passionate about it because I love how it looks. It looks so natural, so much more believable than what we could do otherwise. And it's fun, like you mentioned, how it can really change people's lives, change their confidence, and if they're smiling more throughout the day because they feel better, that just overflows into every other aspect of their life too. And so it's meaningful and that's fun. And so I think for individuals, this is a really good fit for people who want to enhance their smile. Maybe they feel self-conscious about something and they don't want it to look like they've got veneers, but they want it to look natural, and they don't want to damage their natural teeth and shave them down. So this is a really beautiful way. And the neat thing about it is it doesn't stain, it doesn't discolor, it doesn't chip. And I can't really foresee a reason why you'd ever have to replace them, but rather just maintain them over time.
Yeah.
So
it's
exciting.
And I think when you think of veneers, a lot of people are thinking just super white chiclets. Like I literally was like, when I remember sitting in your, went through like your video of like consultation work. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, they look like real teeth. Like you have this like dimensional tooth that is like, wait, is that a real or is that a veneer? And that's, if you guys haven't seen his work, you can go in the show notes, but also I'll tag him. But it's truly like you double take it. And then my favorite thing of following your page is the reactions. Every single reaction is all the same in terms of they love it. It's beautiful. It's believable. Like it's believable that you can have a beautiful smile and not go against the integrity of our body energetically and physically, right? Breaking down those teeth. So it's truly amazing what you're doing. And I'm so glad I found you and sat in your chair. You guys have seen me smile a lot on my Instagram and podcast. So I love my teeth and I'm just so happy.
They look good on you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Courtney.
Well, friends, that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Hustle for Happiness podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing Dr. Hanson's story of finding purpose through creativity, passion, and perseverance. A few things that really resonated with me on today's conversation was 1, having the courage to think differently and blaze your own trail, even when facing doubts. 2, finding fulfillment by aligning your work with your skills, values, and what really lights you up. And lastly, achieving great things through small, consistent improvements over time. Let me know if any of our chat inspired you to pursue your dreams or just gave you a new perspective. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes as we continue hustling for our own versions of happiness. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. I hope today's episode left you better than when I found you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tune in every Monday to kickstart your week and set your weekly intentions with me. You can find me and HFH on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, or online at heycourtneybrook.com. I firmly believe in the power of sharing. If you know someone else who would benefit from this podcast, please share it with them. And remember, when you work on you, I get to be there.